In this video, I'm going to help you get up and running with the Monster Battle Sandbox, and we're going to do this by creating your own AI monster with a patrol, chase, attack, finite state machine. But we won't be using any C# for this video and the next video. We're just going to set up the monster with the components, and we'll look into the scripts later. Alright, so first things first, I'll create a new project, and I'll do Unity 2020.3.2, and the Monster Battle Sandbox uses the universal render pipeline, so make sure to click that template, and then I'll give the project a name, Monster Battle Sandbox Tutorial 1. Unity opens with the ERP demo scene. I'm going to drag the project package into my project folder, but you'll probably have the Monster Battle Sandbox in your package manager, so either way we'll both get an import menu, and so just click to import everything. Go to the Monster Battle Sandbox folder, and you'll see that I put an underscore for folders that I wanted to have at the top. I want them to be easy to find for you and I both. So scroll down and go to the Scenes folder. Scenes I didn't mark with an underscore because we're really only going here once now. And click on the only scene in there, and then right away you'll get prompted to import some TextureMesh Pro essentials, so go ahead and do that. All right, I'll close that, and let's go to the console where we'll find some errors. Click to clear everything out, and let's work through the remaining ones. The first one says that the input system does not exist, so let's go ahead and get the input system. And by the way, there's no way around these errors because I can't include these packages, so you need to go to Window, and then go down to Package Manager. Then, once you have the Package Manager window, on the top left side, go to the drop-down menu and select Unity Registry, and then search for Input. Then go ahead and click Install. Now that we have the new input system package, go to Edit, Project Settings. In Project Settings, go to Player, and expand Other Settings, which is at the bottom below Splash Image. Scroll down, and in Configuration, there is an option called Active Input Handling. Change that from Input Manager Old to Both. That way we can use the new and old system, and this will restart the editor. When it prompts you to start in safe mode, just ignore it because it's asking us this because we still have some errors in the console. They aren't deadly errors. We just need to download Cinemachine, so ignore. Don't enter safe mode. Just click ignore. Close the project settings window if it's open and go back to the package manager and search for Cinemachine to clear out our other errors. I'm using Cinemachine for our cameras. So go ahead and install that. And then it looks like it just gives us warnings but no errors, so go ahead and clear those, and we're good. Now check out the game window, and everything looks good here. All the text shows up and the spawn buttons, so switch to 1920 by 1080, and great. Here's a potential error. I fixed this for you, but I want to talk about it. It says reference script unknown on game object is missing, and you see it's missing on the object. If the script is up high above the mesh renderer, chances are that's due to Probuilder. So let's go to the Unity registry again in the package manager and download that. Probuilder allows you to 3D model in Unity, and I can imagine using that at some point, so go ahead and install it. I'll clear out the messages and look at the object again, and Probuilder is now there. But if we go into the scene view, we'll see that the object is missing, and that's why I went back and changed it so you didn't have this problem. So if you have any errors I've not mentioned, please let me know in the comments and we can figure it out. Since this is all looking good now, let's press play and see what happens. Okay, we got a little error, not sure what that is, but if we clear it, that's a good sign. The dummy units on the left are set up with RTS controls, so you can select them with the left mouse button, and right-clicking on the terrain will move them around. And then spawn in some dummy monsters. These are the AI monsters we'll be focusing on. Let's test things by selecting a unit with left-click and right-click on a monster to have it attack. And we're getting messages in the console for attack and damage. You can pause the game and see that the monsters and units are both attacking each other. And then I'll unpause. Let's check the death animations. And they both work on both sides. I made those, aren't they cute? If you try to spawn monsters, you won't see them because we've not imported any Infinity PBR characters yet. I'll import some of our monsters and a free character because then I'll be able to cover everything. Our monsters are amazing learning tools, that's why we're doing this, but we also want to help you if you don't have them. Go into the Monster Sandbox folder and then go into Prefabs at the top. The monster AI on the right and the RTS units on the left are separated out, so their prefabs are in different folders. But the dummy folder has everything together for both sides. That makes it easy to familiarize yourself with everything without going into a bunch of folders. For the units and monsters, their stats, animations, attacks, and UI portraits are all in different folders. It's not that complicated, but I like having the dummy stuff together as a start. Bring in a dummy prefab monster template. We're going to focus on the animator and animations in this video, and in the next video, we'll walk through the components and set up unique stats. So let's get everything working first. In the scene view, let's check it out. Right now it's drawing a sphere gizmo, and that is for our sphere cast, which is the monster's vision. Bring in another monster template prefab. One will change and the other we'll use for reference. Go to Window and Animation and get an Animator window. Click on Parameters, and these are the parameters that the scripts will be looking for right now, and that's why it's useful to have a template. You can use any animations in any state, but you need to use these parameters for them exactly as they're written, unless you want to change the script. Next, let's get some new characters. So I'll get a couple Infinity monsters. In the package manager, make sure you switch over to the package's My Assets and not the Unity registry. So I'll type low poly and grab a Fishman to test what I have set up for the units. And I'll also get Monster 2 to test the monster side. I'll want to set up a new monster, so I'll grab the Rock Monster, from which I'll be making an Ice Elemental Giant. You can grab any character you want to use, and I'm actually going to head over to the asset store to find one. Let's see, Chamo is a good choice, but actually I'm going to pick this golden tiger here. Thank you, Zealous Interactive. The tiger is a classic, like the Roman Colosseum, right? So whatever you use, check that there are attack, idle, and run animations, death or a got hit animation. Those are great too. Just check the dummy template for the animations that you need, but walking and attacking are very important. Back in Unity, I'll import the tiger. I use the tilde key to disable game objects, so I'll disable the dummies, and we can see our monsters then. Next, we're going to bring in our monsters, look at the materials, and talk about what kind of style you might want to go for. So go into your project folder and try to find your enemy, monster, character, whatever model, and you can tell that you have selected the model because you'll see the import settings in the inspector. So you can see on Monster 2, I have all these import settings here. If we want to go for a smoother look than the polygon look, switch the normals to calculate. That alone doesn't change anything. There's one more setting we need to do. Go to smoothness source and select from angle. That will apply smooth shading to some polygons and flat shading to others, like the spikes. Those polygons have narrower angles, and so they will be flat shaded, as spikes should be. I'm using unlit shaders for a cartoon look, and you actually don't need to recalculate normals for that, but I thought if you wanted to use a toon shader that has shadowing, you want to recalculate the normals to be something like this. I'm going for an unlit look, so on the material, I'll go into Universal Render Pipeline and change it to unlit. And now we have a flat, cartoony look. And I've already set this up if you imported a monster. You should not need to do this. For example, if I go into prefabs and grab a unit, grab a Fishman unit, the Fishman already has the unlit shader set up, even though I just imported them. If you switch them to lit, you'll see that we still see the polygons, but when he is unlit, he's totally flat. We'll get to your monster in a second, but I wanted to show that the Infinity PBR monsters work right out of the box if you have them. Let's go ahead and bring in your monster, and you want to bring in the prefab, not the model. So I'll bring in the rock monster and zero out the transform. If what you've brought in has an animator component, chances are you've brought in the right thing. So I'll also bring in the tiger, and I can see the animator is right there in the inspector. And the tiger is a lovely shade of air magenta. So click on the tiger to get to where the materials are, and on the materials, I'll switch the shader to be Universal Render Pipeline Unlit. And I'll do that for both materials. Then I'll find the texture and drag the texture into the material slot. On the unlit shader, the texture slot is called base map. And I'll just make the eyes black. On the rock monster, as I said, I want him to be an ice elemental. So I'll go into his material, into shader graphs this time, because I have a shader I made called Gradient Height ERP Shader, and I'll make these rocks look icy. I really love the style of the game Bad North, and so that's a little bit of my style inspiration here for this flat look with the gradient height shaders. All right, now that things look good, let's get things working. Right-click on one of the dummy prefabs and go to Prefab and do Unpack, not Unpack completely, just Unpack. I'll talk about why in a moment. I'll activate the dummy with my shortcut, and I want the dummy zeroed out on the transform, so on the position and the rotation. On the rock monster, I also want to do unpack, but this time I want to unpack completely. By doing just unpack in the template, we can keep the health bar canvas and the blood particle system as prefabs. We might make changes to those prefabs, and we want them to be applied to all the monsters. That's why we want to keep them as prefabs and not break the prefab connection. I'll zero out the transform for the rock monster. The root is okay to be 90 degrees though, because that's how it came in. I just want things to be zeroed out on the parent. On the animator, click on the animation controller so that it takes us to the animation controller in the project folder. It will probably be next to the model. Let's check it on the tiger. And this is why it's good that I'm using a couple different assets, because even though the animation controller isn't connected to the animator here, the tiger does have it in its folder, so I'll add that to the controller. And here are all the tiger animations. If we look at the rock monster, we definitely have a lot more animations, and that's a huge part of the value of paid assets. Because the animator is complicated, we want to make a copy that we work from while we keep the original intact. So select the animator for your monster and make a copy of it. And then in the Monster Battle Sandbox folder, there's a custom animations folder. I'll make a new folder for the Ice Elemental Giant. I'll go back to the rock animation controller and I'll name it before I drop it into the animations folder. I know this feels tedious, but this is the professional way to work. This kind of organization is caring about your work and taking yourself seriously, and it feels really amazing to have it all together. Your future self will thank you. Drag the animation controller copy into the custom folder you have, and while we're here, I also want to make copies of the animations, so I'll expand the model. Select Attack, Idle, Walk, and then Control-D duplicate those animations. And then also drag those animations into the custom folder for whatever monster you're working on. I'll also go through and rename the animations. For this next step, we're going to make animator changes, so go into your custom animations folder and drag the copy of the animator controller we made into the animator. We'll be working on our copy, and since we named it, we can easily see that we're working on the right one, our copy. For example, the rock monster has this cool rubble animation, but for this setup, we're not really going to use it yet. So if your monster has a bunch of animations, I suggest for now to delete the transitions and move what we aren't using off to the left. And remember, you don't have to panic when we're making these changes because we're working on a copy. We can always go back and look if we're worried about how to hook one of the transitions back up. For the monster, maybe your monster has a unique entrance. Rather than the rubble on entry, I'll just set it to the default state to locomotion. Don't worry if your monster doesn't have a locomotion state. We'll get to that in a moment. Locomotion is a state, but it's also a float parameter. The velocity sets this float, this number here, and this number will also drive our blend tree between idle and walk animations. So if I hop to the tiger doesn't have this, and your monster probably doesn't have it either. It goes right to idle. But wait, I realized I'm working on the original of the animator controller. I need to duplicate this animator controller, rename it, and then make a folder for it in custom animations for the tiger. Then I'll also go in and duplicate walk, idle, and attack. And I'm guessing that hit is the tiger's attack. Just like I did before, I want to bring all the copies of this into the custom animation folder for the tiger. Back into the tiger in our scene, because we don't want the tiger animator controller. We want our custom, our boutique artisanal animator controller. Now that we have our animator controllers ready, let's take a look at the dummy again. The transition parameters need to match exactly. This is what the script is looking for. So on the rock monster, let's put locomotion to the top. And I have locomotion, but it's not capitalized, so it needs to be capitalized. The tiger does not have this, so I'll add a parameter and make it a float and call it capital L locomotion. So come on, baby, do the locomotion with me. And we also need death, Attack1, got hit, and animation cancel. So in the rock monster, I'll change this to be just Attack1, and the dummy doesn't have idle. So you get what I'm doing. Go back and forth between the dummy and your monster and create the same parameters. Even if you don't have something like the death animation, which the tiger doesn't have, still make the parameter. It's okay if you have extra parameters. The scripts don't care about them. I'll set up change, death, and got hit Back to the tiger, we need to make the parameters, but while you're working on yours, it's also a good idea to change the animator state names. For example, the tiger doesn't have a got hit, and what is hit is actually an attack, so I'll rename that to Attack1. I'll use an any state and make a transition from any state to attack. Let's take a look at the transition. First, let's move the transitions to have the attack happen right away, and then I'll make a new parameter and make it a trigger and call it Attack1. The rock monster has an Attack1, and I'm going to clean up the rock monster animator real quick so this is easier to follow. Much better. Okay, let's check the transition from any state to attack. The transition is Attack1, what we renamed it to. On the tiger and probably your monster, select that same transition that we just made from any state to attack. Scroll down and click the plus to add a condition, and then change the condition to Attack1. Our script will trigger Attack1, and no matter what the monster is doing, taking a bubble bath, picking up milk at the grocery store, Attack1 will trigger the attack animation in the attack state. Also make a transition from Attack1 to idle, and I think I want to change this idle setup. Even though our dummy doesn't use the blend tree, because, I wouldn't say this to his face, but he's just a capsule and doesn't use locomotion or blend trees, we want to make a blend tree for your monster because you have an idle and a walk animation. And blend trees are a lot easier than they look. Just right-click on the animator, select Create State, and then from New Blend Tree. Double-click on the new blend tree. Blend tree automatically selects locomotion for the parameter, and that will drive the blending. Select the blend tree, click the plus, and add 2 motion fields. And this is where you'll drag in your custom idle and walk animations, and I really should rename those so it's clear that there are copies. You want your idle to be at a threshold of 0 and walk to be a threshold of 1. This is a good time to check whether your animations are looping, so I'm doing that. Go back to the base layer and let's rename the blend tree to locomotion. Right-click on entry and do set default state to locomotion. We can get rid of our idle and walk now, and actually I'll just have everything together that we've put together. And here I forgot to make the transition from attack to locomotion for when the attack is finished. I'm editing it in, but I'll keep the error in the next video because it might help someone. Like my Infinity PBR monster that has scripts for creating variations for the character and demoing the animations, your monster probably has some scripts, so delete those. Enough with animator stuff for now, because it's time to get our monsters working with the scripts. We unpacked a prefab of the dummy capsule. Delete the model capsule object, but keep everything else that's underneath there. Grab all the monster stuff underneath the parent object and move that underneath the dummy prefab. So we've swapped stuff in. On the top, parent of the original, copy the animator component, and then go into the dummy prefab and paste the component values into the animator so everything will fill in with our avatar and controller. Then you can delete that original parent monster object and rename the dummy prefab to be your monster. Try to give it some name to where you'll know it'll be your prefab different from the original. Cool. Now we have a couple animation things to do, so find your attack animation, then go to your custom animation folder where you copied the animations. Take the Attack1 copy and drag it into your animator state animation slot. And this is why I said to name it. If we look at got hit, it doesn't have the little tag I included in the name, but I see attack. Okay, that's an attack I made. And the reason why it's important to keep track of this is because we're setting up animation events. Let's look at the attack animation. Select your monster and bring up an animation window. If you can't find it, go to Window Animations. On the ice elemental, again, with the naming, we can easily see the animation that we copied because it has the little tag I ended to the name. It's also not read-only, meaning we can't write to the original animations. We can't add these animation events. So in your attack, scrub the animation and try to find the moment of impact. Where the ice elemental makes contact, wham, that's where we need to make an animation event. Right-click above the keyframes and below the time marker, right-click and add an animation event. Then, with the event selected, you'll see a function drop-down in the inspector. And sometimes people don't see this function drop-down because you need to have selected your monster in the scene to see it. Select function and scroll to about 3/4 down and select hit. Hit is a method or function that will be called at this moment in the animation. If you're new to this, this means our animation is telling our script to do things, which is pretty cool. Another thing I'm noticing is that I'm not seeing the layers that I've set up. Those must not come across in a package. I'll look into that. So if you see stuff here, I figured it out and you don't have to worry about it. The tags came in fine. So let's add a few layer names here. In layers, select add layer, and I need you to follow me exactly here. So turn yourself into a follow me robot for a moment. Skip layer 6. I use that for post-processing, but I'm not right now. On layer 7, add clickable. Layer 8, monster. Layer 9, player. Layer 10, unit spells. Layer 11, monster spells. And make sure they're capitalized like I have them here. And that's good for now. If you select the terrain, for example, you'll see that it is on the clickable layer now, and Battle Arena is not clickable. The platform is a clickable layer. The water is not clickable. It seems to remember the number layer, but not the name. The monster is now on the monster layer because we worked from a template that was on a layer. Really quick, I'll go through the process with the tiger because I see it is not swapped into an unpacked template. So I'll duplicate the template, unpack the top thing, not all the things, and I'll delete the model capsule. And watch out, kids, because we're going to unpack the tiger completely. Then I'll move the child tiger parts into the dummy. I'll copy the tiger animator, delete the tiger, and paste the component values on the dummy, and the info is filled in. Then I'll rename it, and all the names and layers are right. At this point, let's press play and see what happens. So get your notebooks ready. Let us document any issues with our monsters. Okay, the ice elemental works. Awesome. Let's check out the tiger. I'll be surprised if the tiger works. The tiger works, but what's up with the animation? And I realize in checking the animation that something weird is going on with the animation itself. Maybe that could be fixed on import somehow, but fortunately in this case, I have a run animation, so let's try the run animation. I'll drag run into walk, and that looks great. We can preview the locomotion value too. Let's press play again. Aw, that's adorable. Let's kill it. Actually, I want to show you something. You might not have a character that uses root motion animations. With root motion, the animation moves the character. I've not used root motion for any of the monsters, just because you might not have it, and it was the way I just wanted to go with this whole project. Turning root motion off, see how the monster moves forward and then glitches back. Okay, so checking that root motion is off outside of play mode, go into the animator and in locomotion, change walk to be your copy of walk, the walk that we made. And then select walk and toggle loop pose and bake into pose for root transform XZ. You can see the monster by dragging the monster into the preview window. Look at the monster, and the monster isn't moving. If I uncheck those things, the monster moves forward. I want the monster to be in place for the animation because we're moving the monster's velocity. We don't want the animation to move it. We're not using root motion. I'll also drag my idle in, and I'll loop that and bake the root transform into the pose. This ensures that the monster stays in place. Now, time to check the tiger. Drag the tiger into the preview window, and it looks like the animations of the tiger stay in place. No need to worry about baking the root transform. And the monster's working fine now. So let's spawn in a dummy unit, and we get a weird error, not sure what that is. We can clear it so everything's fine. Let's see if the monster can find our units. The monster is chasing. The dummies can attack the monster, and the monster dies. Looking at the debug log, I do see that the monster did get a hit in on the dummy units. Cool. But the elemental felt pretty weak to me. It doesn't have enough hit points. So I'm going to make note of that, and we'll cover that in the next video. Now let's try the tiger. Will the tiger attack the dummy units? Spawn the dummies, error, whatever. The tiger is chasing the units. The tiger is attacking, but there are no logs that damage is happening. So why do you think that is? Do you know what I didn't do? I didn't add a hit animation event to the tiger. Let's look at what we have in the animator. And now this is one of those bad organizational moments where I don't know if what I'm looking at is a copy or the original animation. In the custom animations folder, I'll name this animation with a unique name. And now I can see that I didn't drag this into the animator. I'll drag in our copy of the animation, and actually I want to call this animation attack and not hit, so future Jim it doesn't get confused. And now we can go into the animation window, and let's look at it in the scene. Click on the tiger, and we can preview the attack when the little paw is hitting right there. I'll right-click and put an animation event, and then we can make the event call hit, just like before. With that fixed, now let's run the game and see if the tiger has damage. Come on, tiger. Okay, so the tiger needs to be faster, and the tiger attacks. The console says the tiger killed a dummy, cool. And the tiger did check to see if anyone else was alive, but it didn't see the other alive unit, so I'll have to check that. Alright, so now the tiger is finding the other one, and the tiger is attacking from way too far away. That's another thing to make note of. I'll stop the game, and at this point, great, everything works, but we have some notes. The first is that the ice elemental doesn't have enough hit points for how big and cool he is. The other thing we noticed is that the tiger attacks from too far away, and the tiger could be faster, at least for the chase. In the next video, we'll swap out our dummy stats and attacks for unique tiger and ice elemental stats to fix this. But hey, we got things working, so congratulations! Get a drink of water, stretch, pet your dog, and come back, and I'll see you in video 2.